Croeso, this is James, aka JP Harker, coming to you with another video. This one is a TBR video, and it's mostly fantasy type stuff, but also myth type stuff. I do not anticipate getting through these quickly, but I chip away at these whenever I can. The first of them is The Mammoth Book of Celtic Myths and Legends by Peter Beresford Ellis. Now, I see this and I immediately have to read it because I do love Celtic myths. I love Celtic history. And I've done what I so often do with books, and you'll see it in some of these others. I started reading it and then saw something shiny and put that next to the bed as well. So there's now 4 books next to the bed and 1 next to the toaster, and I know I'm terrible, but there we go. But it means I've got a little bit of insight into these before I sort of talk to them about them on TBRs. Now, this, it looks like it's written rather differently to the Norse myth book that I read a while ago. Not only is the introduction very, very interesting as it goes into language and what exactly were/are the Celts, and a tiny bit of its history, but it's also divided up by region, or by nation, depending on your definition. So we have Wales, Scotland and Ireland, and we've also got the Isle of Man and Brittany, and all of the various legends that come from there. Now, predictably, I read the introduction and then flipped straight to the Welsh section, because that's what I'm like. And so I've read a couple of these, displaying my ignorance. I didn't know that Blodeuwedd wasn't the commonly known name for the legend that features her. It's actually Math ap Myfanwy, I think. Sorry, Math Vab Myfanwy. See, for someone who likes Celtic myth, that was something that I just didn't know. I was convinced it was the legend of Blodeuwedd, and that was it. I knew bits and pieces of it from school. And the sun is now shining into a gap in the curtains that I didn't realise, so I'm going to subtly change my angle mid-video, because that's the kind of professional video maker that I am. And that shows you how little I expect to see sunlight where I live. Wales forever, Cymru am byth. But yes, Celtic Myths and Legends by Peter Beresford Ellis. Good stuff. The next one, I'm not so sure on. It's a Tolkien, and it is The Histories of Middle-earth, Volume 1, The Book of Lost Tales, Part 1. Now this is one of those ones, like the Silmarillion, where Christopher Tolkien has gone ahead and said, I'll put together all of his various notes and put them into a book so that people can read them. And that's very nice of him. But the Silmarillion, it's not a page-turner, let's put that lightly. And the Book of Lost Tales, what I have read of it so far, because I'm saying this is TBR, I'm actually that far through it, because this is at the top of the pile of books by the bed. Thus far, you can tell this wasn't made to be published. You can tell this was notes that Professor Tolkien had, and ideas from early on that eventually found their way and were adapted into the Silmarillion. Now, there are a lot of interesting things in here, of Melko as opposed to Melkor, and that he wasn't the only slightly dodgy member of the Ainur, and that they were referred to as gods in this. And it's got these little interesting things, but it's not an easy read. It is quite ponderous, and a lot of time is dedicated to analysis rather than story. And to someone like me, that's quite interesting. To the layman, and that sounds patronising, to somebody who just liked Lord of the Rings and thought, I'll have a look at that, be warned, this is for someone who likes analysing how Tolkien put his stories together, rather than a collection of stories in itself. So I was given this, and its two follow-ups, Book of Lost Tales, Part 2, and The Lays of Beleriand. And I'm sure I will get round to them at some point, but these aren't on my current TBR, I just flashed them up for the sake of it. Because, they're not easy reads. I have another Tolkien, this one's courtesy of the local library, and it is The Story of Kullervo, edited by Verlin Flieger, I think its name, or Flieger, and it's this one. And I love my library. It's a great place for the boy, because they've got a little kids section, and a great place to get books if you're not quite sure. And this one, I've only read a very tiny amount of this one. I think I just don't think I'm through the introduction. But apparently this comes from a Finnish myth, and was part of the inspiration for Children of Húrin. And Kullervo is very reminiscent of Turin Turambar. That's more or less all I know at this stage. I shall have to let you know how it goes. But, having looked at its structure, it looks like only about a third of it, maybe half of it, is actually the story of Kullervo, and that the rest of it is, as with Book of Lost Tales, analysis, and looking at the Kalevala, which is where the original Finnish legend comes from. So that could be very interesting, it could be quite ponderous. We shall see. And the last one is going to be a challenge for me, but it's one I need to be doing, because this is Ifor Bach by Eirik Salisbury, and as the title implies, it is a Welsh book. And let me see, Bigeiaf, 1958, yn arw ym mhob ystyr, ar eiran drwch, mae'r gwarch glas yn chwilio am fwyd, ac mae dyfodol llys Gelligaer yn beryglus o fregus. For the record, Gelligaer is like 3 miles that way from where I live. That's where the Roman fort is, or what's left of it. Stupid sunlight. I'm just going to have to hold a hand up here. I am such a professional video maker, it's unbelievable. I'll make use of the story of Kullervo. There we go. A fydd I fod yn llwyddio i amddiffyn ei gastell a'i bobl, a'i deulu rhag y gelyn, a phwy yn union yw'r gelyn. Now the fact that there were words in there that I wasn't sure of, and the fact that I was a little hesitant, is damning testament to how rusty my Welsh has become. I used to be writing A-level papers in Welsh, and now this, which is a young adult book at best, possibly even an older kid young adult book, it's a book where I'm going to be double-checking vocabulary. But I do need to be getting back into my Welsh. It is inevitable, partly for my own sense of pride, and partly because my son's going to be going to a Welsh school in a little over half a year, so I don't have much choice in the matter. And I am a little ashamed that I've let it get this bad. There we go. A more dedicated YouTuber would have cut this here and sort of redone this in some clever editing manner. But I am not a particularly good YouTuber. I just like talking about books. And I don't know how all this editing malarkey worked, and I'm just very old in a comparatively less old body. And I'm going to leave it at that. So, holding his copy of the story of Kullervo up to keep the sun out of his eyes, this is James, aka JP Harker. Hwyl fawr.